Please welcome Redzone President Ken Fisher.
Hey everybody! It's a weird video. Productivity uplifts, more communication, more engagement. Well, we're going to talk about that now. What are the three pillars of the manufacturing platform? Redzone, the connected workforce. Adaptive, the intelligent ERP. And Champion AI, our smart agentic layer. I'm going to talk about Redzone's connected workforce solution. It empowers the front line. That indeed is our mission. Transform manufacturing through empowering the front lines to work with purpose and win the day. Raise your hand if you are a technologist, an engineer, an IT. That's pretty much everybody. I knew it was everybody, but thanks for those of you who humored me by raising your hand. So what does that mean to empower engagement? How does that drive productivity? So I've worked in manufacturing for 20 years before joining Redzone. One of my first jobs, I worked with Zach Sosby in a Lockheed Martin missiles and fire control factory in Ocala, Florida, horse country. And I was the operations manager for the Hellfire missile. One of my operators, there was 500 operators building the Hellfire missile at that time in Ocala, Florida. One of my operators was Debbie Gilley. Debbie Gilley had 30 years of experience. Debbie Gilley worked in a cell making cables and harnesses. This harness, a very important cable, was called the shotgun harness. The end of it looked like a shotgun, and it's where the missile connected to the launcher on the Apache helicopter, a very critical component. And she had built this harness for 30 years. We're in the heat of ramping up. We'd ramp down the program to 25 missiles a month, and we had to, after 9/11, ramp it back up to 500 missiles a month. She's working with new employees. She's doing a retention test. So a retention test is after you've crimped the contact onto the wire, put the contact into the connector, you got to make sure it doesn't push out of the connector. Well, every couple hundred contacts, it bends, it bends, it bends. She looks at it, it looks different, it's a different color. She notices that something is different. And Debbie cares. Debbie goes to, I'm not going to name the quality engineer that Debbie went to. He is not the hero of this story, but his name was Bobby. Bobby's gone on to do good things, and he learned from this lesson. Debbie goes to Bobby and says, something is different. Every few hundred contacts, I go to do retention tests, it bends over. I've never seen anything like it. It's the wrong material. Bobby goes, thank you for bringing it up, Debbie. I'm an engineer. I've got weeks outside of college. I know exactly what to do, which is exactly what I thought when I was a young engineer. He takes it to the laboratory. He gets third parties involved. He said, we've got the wrong material. My most experienced operator says so. They come back. They're like, it's probably the most compliant to contact spec material that we've ever seen. Gives it to Bobby. Bobby's like, Debbie, sorry, you were wrong. Keep building missiles. And he goes back to his cubicle. A week goes by, she's still having it. Brings it to Bobby again. Bobby's like, I don't know what you want me to do. We tested it, it's fine. A week goes by, finally, I'm walking around. I like to walk fast around the factory. I always have a sheet of paper in my hand so people think I'm busy. Smiling so they think I'm nice. And Debbie says, get over here, Smiley. Said, I've been working with Bobby, and these contacts keep bending, and he says they're fine, but they are not fine. They're the wrong material. I said, well, Debbie, you've been doing this for 30 years. Bobby's been doing this for 30 days. I think we should look into this. So we got a bunch of engineers involved, got a bunch of third parties, got the contact involved, and Bobby was right. They were the right material, but they were not the right hardness. And he didn't think to go get a hardness test. It's not good enough to be the right material. You have to anneal it in the manufacturing process, which I know many of you in the audience know. So because we only had 2 or 3 weeks of missiles that were built at risk, we were able to contain the entire problem, get those missiles back to the factory to rework without a single customer impact, which not only saved Lockheed Martin millions of dollars in rework and reputation, but likely saved the lives of servicemen and servicewomen in the field. We feel very lucky in manufacturing when we have a Debbie Gilley. I've done the analysis. There's about 5 to 20% Debbie Gilleys in every factory, depending on the continuous improvement culture. When Redzone was founded, we knew that if you provide the right environment as leaders in your factory, you can increase. There'll never be more than one Debbie Gilly, but you can roughly get about 80% Debbie Gillys in your factory if you create the right environment that unlocks discretionary effort. How do you do that with software? You cannot, but you can do it with technology compared with continuous improvement coaching program. And how we know that? Because we've done it 1,700 times. The Redzone Connected Workforce platform causes a lot of confusion. Oh, your productivity module measures OEE, you must be an MES. We're not an MES. Connected Workforce Solutions, not an MES. That's not an Oh, could somebody bring me that phone, please? I need to answer that. Where was I? It's not an MES. Oh, you do quality checks in Redzone with the compliance module, and you do safety inspections with the compliance module. You guys must be a QMS. We're not a QMS. QMSs are good. MESs are good. That's not what Connected Workforce Solutions are. You have the reliability module, which transitions basic maintenance skills to operators, work orders, PMs, operator care. You must be a CMMS. We're not a CMMS. We have work instructions and skills matrix. You must be an LMS. We're not an LMS. Connected Workforce Solutions are everything that the frontline workers need, and only the things that the frontline workers need to empower them, to provide them with the information, and to make the right thing to do the easy thing to do. Our productivity module has Visual Factory. That's basically the only bit that's MES-like. And for companies that have MES, we easily sit on top of an Ignition. We easily sit on top of a GE Prophecy or Rockwell. It also has problem solving so that when your OEE is bad, or your production line efficiency, or your throughput is bad, or you've got unplanned downtime, you actually do something about it. Short term, during the shift while it's happening, long term, those Kaizen events. Our compliance module, we call it compliance because it's not just quality. It's compliance to anything you need in your manufacturing operation, whether it's quality, safety, operational tasks, everything you need to digitize, including statistical process control so that you can determine anomalies and fix them. The reliability module has operator care. It is the only maintenance solution that is primarily designed for the production operator so that you can transition basic maintenance skills, total productive maintenance for those of you familiar with the Toyota production system, transition basic maintenance skills to the operators so that maintenance technicians can focus on the more complex tasks. Work orders, PMs, inventory management, work order management, and then no matter how efficient your factory is, things still happen. So we built Uber for the maintenance department. So when they have an emergency on their line, they need help, it's one click of a button. Every TV in the factory lights up, letting maintenance know we've got a production line with an emergency downtime. They're notified. When they accept it, the operator's notified, they're connected, they send video, they video chat. So when maintenance comes out, they're prepared to fix that problem, rapidly reducing downtime associated with these unplanned events. And then we have the learning module. The learning module re-engineers the employee experience for frontline workers from the day they step foot in that factory, where they're given a buddy. The big screen TVs in the factory have their picture on it, a fun fact about them. They feel like they're part of something bigger, not just someone here hired from the shoulders down. Skills matrix when they're ready to get promoted, and they can create videos, the YouTubeification of the front lines, the YouTubeification of the factory, so that when operators have local knowledge, they can share that local knowledge with operators. Everything that we do is built on a communication and collaboration platform. You heard in the video, Redzone customers talking about the #1 communication platform in their factory. Think of it like Slack for the front lines, but within the context of what matters in a manufacturing operation. You can put Teams on a shop floor, you can put Slack on a shop floor, but without it being connected to your production data, your ERP, your MES, your CMMS, without all the knowledge of the targets in your factory, what are they going to communicate about? Sanjay mentioned 26% productivity uplift. You heard Angie talk about the productivity uplifts from Hershey. You heard multiple folks on the video talk about their productivity uplifts. We measure the productivity uplifts. It's what we do. We measure efficiencies in factories before they ever implement Redzone. We measure it after. We have it in Redzone. We compare it to the financials. There are 26% productivity uplift, and that literally means there's factories in the Redzone community that have achieved such high productivity uplifts, they can go from 5 days of production to 4 days of production. Saving Friday for preventative maintenance, PMs, give people back their weekends if they're working on the weekends. But that is just an average. There are companies in here that are automotive manufacturers, experts in the Toyota production system. You've been doing TPM for decades. You're highly automated, highly sophisticated. You have many systems for your shop floors. These companies tend to fall into where you see group 4. There are 2 dimensions that are largely correlated with the productivity uplift that we would expect a manufacturer to get. One is the starting efficiency. The lower the starting efficiency, the higher the productivity uplift they likely get. The other is their continuous improvement maturity. Obviously, if you have a very high continuous improvement maturity and very high starting efficiencies, these companies in group 4 in the top right, you have less low-hanging fruit. Those factories get 11% labor productivity uplifts. Those tend to be the largest manufacturing companies in the world. An 11% productivity uplift is worth millions of dollars annually. On the flip side, we've got our bottom right. These are companies that have very little continuous improvement. They're just starting their journey. Maybe they've hired a new VP of operations. They come from a company with a Lean Six Sigma background. They're ready to implement Lean Six Sigma, continuous improvement principles, TPS, TPM in that factory. They have low starting efficiencies. They're just starting their continuous improvement journeys. The average for that quadrant is 40% labor productivity uplifts. And this is in 90 days. Every one of the modules we talked about has a 90-day coaching program. These are the results from the productivity module, the first module to be deployed in any given factory. I'm going to take you, we'll look at those 2 extremes. So we'll look at the top right quadrant, the bottom left quadrant. Factories in the top right quadrant deploy Redzone for very different reasons. They've got an MES, they've got a data layer, they've got a CMMS, QMS, they've got all of these systems. They also have very frustrated frontline workers who don't feel like they have a voice, who don't feel, that feel overburdened, that they spend more of their day updating systems than running the machines that they were hired to run. So let's go down that. The reason Group 4 deploys Redzone is to give their employees a voice and to simplify the experience for their new employees that are coming into their factory every day. The first day that they're on site, they're handed an iPad or an Android device, just like they would use to communicate with their loved one or hate swipe on social media. But there's none of that in the factory. They select their language for the app. They select their language for communication. It is automatically, all communication, whether it's work instructions, chat communication, is translated into their native language. They're given a video from the CEO or the plant manager to talk about, here is why you're important to us. Here's what our culture is all about. You have a place to grow in this company. Welcome aboard. All of their compliance training is at their fingertips. OSHA, ISO, FDA, USDA. They're able to do their compliance training. And then when they get out onto the shop floor, this is their interface. This is their home base. This is an example. There's lots of different ways to track production in Redzone in a factory. This is an example of a machine center or an assembly line where we have a takt time, and you can see every unit that was made during that shift and whether it hit the target or it missed the target. And down below, we have the Pareto chart, the 80-20 rule, teaching folks to focus on the biggest problems. Let's not focus on the loudest voice in the factory. Let's focus on the biggest problems as a team in the factory. When it's time for me to do an assembly or go out to the shop floor and inspect a piece of equipment, my work instructions are there at my fingertips. When I have a problem, I don't have to go find the answer finds me. These videos are automatically transcribed, translated in their native language, so that people feel competent when they are on the shop floor. They don't have to go look for the outdated work instructions on the supervisor's desk in a 3-ring binder. If they find a problem with an assembly, or they find a problem with a piece of equipment, they don't have to play the telephone game of asking their supervisor to go get help from the supervisor of another department, who then goes to the technician in maintenance. And by the time that message gets from the operator to maintenance, I know this doesn't happen in your factories, but I've seen it. There's some finger pointing going on. And maintenance says, bullshit, there's no problem with that piece of equipment. The operator set it up wrong. And the operator says, no way, it was working fine, it's maintenance fault. With Redzone, the operator takes a picture, takes a video, sends it directly to the maintenance technician, say, hey, something's different, something's wrong, can you help me? We break down those barriers, we speed up problem solving. That's a system of action. If that problem that they found needs to be escalated, needs to go into a work order, one touch of a button, that service request becomes a work order. For small to medium-sized companies, they use Redzone for their CMMS. They'll manage their work orders there. For large companies, they will integrate with their EAM or their CMMS and send that service request to the EAM or CMS. And if they need to talk more about the problems that are happening on the front line, then the maintenance staff, while they're in building 5 and the operator's over in building 1, you don't have to get on your tricycle as a maintenance, throw your tools in the box, ride your tricycle out to building 1, go talk to the operator just to find out the problem that they were describing is not the real problem, and now you got to go all the way back to the maintenance shop. Let's give them the tools that they're used to using in their day-to-day life. So that's group 1, high starting efficiencies, high continuous improvement culture. They're using the tools. They're very familiar with it. They have an MES. They have a CMMS. All of these things flow into dashboards. If you were to ask Scott Huckins, the CEO of Reynolds Consumer Products, why Redzone delivers productivity uplifts, he will simply say, much simpler than I am saying today, transparency and accountability. And it's not just transparency and accountability for the front lines. It's not just transparency and accountability for the managers. It's transparency and accountability for everybody in the factory, because we all have the same goals. Everything flows up to dashboards, whether this is an example of maintenance and TPM dashboard, there's quality dashboards, production dashboards. And people think, oh, that's what the system's all about. It's about the dashboards. No, but they are a critical piece of all of us holding ourselves accountable. So let's talk about the other end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum, down here on the bottom right, group 1. These are factories that have relatively low starting efficiencies, and they're just starting their CI journey. When you walk into a factory, they're typically, you go ask an operator how their day's going, and they're like, well, my supervisor's not yelling at me, it must be going well. I generally know my gut feel if I'm having a good day or a bad day. I'm doing all of my quality checks on paper. And when I need help, I play the telephone game with my supervisor and that very angry maintenance technician. They roll out Redzone for the basics. It's all no-code, low-code application downloaded exactly from the app stores. This is why we can get started in less than 8 weeks, why we deliver ROI in less than 6 months. But they're looking for the visual factory. When you walk into a factory with Redzone, you're gonna have large screen displays everywhere. When I was in manufacturing, I had a lean sensei from Toyota giving me a little bit of guff about my visual factory, which I thought was pretty good. He said it was too complicated. He said a one-eyed racehorse should be able to run through your factory and know exactly where your problems are and know exactly where you're doing well so that you can solve problems by exception. Well, that's what these factories are looking for. They're data poor, and they're looking to get the data from the production lines and visualize it everywhere. And it's a social mobile app, so for those Redzone customers that are in the factory, this is my factory today, that are in the conference room today, I see them checking their phone. I assume they're checking Redzone because they can communicate with their shop floor and see how they're doing. For the supervisors now, instead of a clipboard with a bunch of pieces of paper and a bunch of notes, Throw that out. You've got your mobile device, and has everything. It has all your business systems on there. You know, if you have an ERP interface that's mobile, you can have that on there. You can have your email on there, but now they've also got their plant performance data for production, quality, maintenance, learning and development at their fingertips. They can manage by exception. Click down to the bottom where you see quality, and I've got my quality dashboard. So the quality team can manage by exception. Green is good, yellow's bad, red's way worse. And I can quickly drill in to see what's happening. You'll actually see one that's black. What does that mean? That means we missed a quality check. Most factories have no idea if they've missed a critical quality check until it's too late. Here you can send triggers, send reactions, send alerts to the people of your choice when you're not meeting your exception. We call this one green bars and gold stars. People want to know if they're winning or losing. Let's not just focus on the red, which is critically important, but also let's recognize where we've got great performance. You can quickly see if we're trending in the right direction or the wrong direction. And here, in work cell 1, we're setting a record. And that supervisor eating their breakfast at the breakfast table before they come in for their shift that morning can send a high five to those operators to recognize them. Rewarded behavior is repeated behavior. Jimmy Johnson, coming from the University of Miami, go you, goes to the NFL. I'd never heard Troy Aikman tell that story. They thought, nah, a college football coach is never going to make it in the NFL. We don't need all this, he said, hoorah. We don't need hoorah. We're professionals. We're paid a lot of money to do a job. But Jimmy Johnson knew you can unlock discretionary effort in any human being because we're all very, very similar. Chat communication. Every single one of your production workers, I can guarantee, I've been in many of your factories I haven't been in. Guarantee, if I walk into that break room, I'm going to see your production workers on their phones texting their loved ones. Well, why not bring these familiar technologies to their fingertips on the shop floor? You can see here, the supervisor received a push notification from the operator. An operator had a problem, a quality problem on the line. Rather than just asking the friend next to them or passing it along the line and crossing your finger, I hope it's probably not a problem. Take a picture, communicate. Well, you'll notice there's multiple languages being communicated. So if English is not my native language, then I can translate it in my native language. We have a factory that runs Redzone called Mariani Packaging in Omaha, Nebraska. And they have an operator who's from Nepal, and he works on the end of the line. His name is Durga. Durga doesn't speak English. He's from Nepal. He's Nepali. He's been here for a few months in the United States, looking to live the American dream. He packs boxes at the end of a shampoo line, and he's very happy to do it, and he's very good at it. He speaks 3 languages, has a PhD in biomedical engineering, but doesn't speak English, so he's packing boxes at the end of the line. When the translation was put in the hands of Durga, he lit up, and they realized that Durga had a lot more to offer than just packing cases onto pallets at the end of the line. They helped get him lessons, they helped teach him English, paid for his college. He's now a supervisor on night shifts. That's informal communication. Chats, app mentions, line logs, video chats. There's also formal communication, formal collaboration, familiar with the tiered accountability, so short interval control, shift handovers, shift huddles, daily production meetings, weekly performance reviews. All of these are built in Redzone. System of action. The data to know if we're winning or losing is just the start. It's 7% of the code in Redzone is that data to tell us if we're winning or losing. Everything else is what are we going to do about it to prioritize our top loss, get to the root cause, and solve it forever. So I can get to I can easily see what my top loss is. I can create a root cause analysis around it, whether that's 5 or a fishbone diagram. And then I can create action items around those root cause analyses. And then those action items live on a Kanban board for all of us to see. Transparency and accountability for all. So that's how Redzone has helped most factories go from We have a problem on Sunday. Monday morning, we come in 6 a.m. to the morning. Oh man, I used to love that Monday morning, 6 a.m. production meeting. You've missed your targets for the weekend. You're looking at the weekend data. You see that there was a major upset on a critical piece of bottlenecked equipment. You say, D shift isn't going to be back till Thursday, so let's put up an action item for D shift to do a root cause analysis. They do the root cause analysis on a whiteboard on Thursday. They create action items that go out 3 weeks. A month from that problem, we're solving a problem that may never happen again. Redzone comes in and condenses that, federates problem solving, democratizes the data. Now frontline employees are solving problems at the root during the shift. That is a huge paradigm shift, worth roughly 26% productivity. Next, with the integration of Champion AI, we're not going to be solving this shift's problem now. We're going to be solving tomorrow's problem before it happens. You can go do a demo at the demo station. We've got the line lead agent. What do great line leads do? There's someone you can ask questions to. They help you prepare for shifts, and they go get help when you need help. Here you can see where an operator's having an issue with weak seals and ask the line lead agent via Champion AI, I'm having issues with weak seals. That line lead agent goes out and looks at every action item, every work order, every chat, everything that's ever been done to solve that problem, uses machine learning to decide which ones had the biggest impact, and then comes back and say, hey, you might want to consider these things. The operator says, yes. I think the applicator pads, I've gone and looked at them, the applicator pads are what needs to be changed. And using agentic capabilities, line lead agent says, would you like me to create the work order for maintenance to follow up on that problem? Yes. This is how the next generation expects to interact with systems in business. They do not want to go to 20 screens and tab, tab, tab and fill out a form. They would just want to ask a chatbot to do it for them. What else do great line leads do? I don't know, I'm asking. What else do great line leads do? They help prepare for shift. So we can go in, we can go to the line lead agent and we ask him to do a game ready. A game ready basically says, hey, tell me what happened on the last shift. Instead of going to 50 different screens and 3 different systems, Champion AI and the line lead agent go out and find out what are the safety issues, what are the production issues, what are the quality issues that happened on the previous shift. But then the line lead or the supervisor or the operator can ask, what is likely going to happen on my current shift? Champion AI has been trained on 1,700 factories worth of data. We have very good models that highly correlate and predict run changeovers and what your problems will be. It'll ask, your top problem is going to be this. Do you want me to create a follow-up action item so the next time the line is down, we can deal with that problem proactively instead of dealing with it for weeks? The last thing a great line lead does is not just help you with problem, but predict problems. Line leads have typically the most experienced people in the factory. So the line leads are able to predict when your changeovers are likely to happen based on how you're running, what your top problems are going to be, make recommendations on how to solve it. And that's exactly what Champion AI inside of Redzone can do. Here you'll see a pop-up. Ambient AI detects when a changeover is going to happen, what your top losses are going to be, makes a recommendation on what you can do. The operator can click it. It takes them right to the seconds of that video that speak to the problem that you're about to have. So that before you ever have an issue with weak seals or skipping labels or a CNC fault, you're able to solve that through center lines or some other fashion. Thank you very much. That's all I had as far as the Redzone demo goes. Thank you very much. All right, I know you're like, Ken, he seems like a sleazy sales guy. I'm not, I'm a factory guy just like you. But he seems like a sleazy sales guy and I don't blame you. So I would expect you to be thinking, it'd be way better to hear from people that have actually deployed a connected workforce solution in their factory. So that's what we're gonna do. First, I'm gonna welcome Sanjay Brahmawar back up to the stage. Thank you, Sanjay.
Awesome.
Sanjay, I got a question for you. One of the first things he said, Ken, I have no idea what this connected workforce solution thing is. I've never heard of it. I've been in technology for 35 years. I've worked for mega companies, IBM. I've deployed SAP. I've been the CEO of an iPaaS company. I was like, let me explain it to you. He said, I don't want you to explain it to me. I want you to send me to one of your customers. So you went to several customers in Chicago area. What did you think when you first saw it?
As you said, I've been working in software for a very long time, and I've seen, technology and people talk about technology and how they use technology. And I have to say, I was absolutely blown away because there was nobody in tech who spoke to me. It was basically operations people who had this conversation with me. And they were so proud about how they were using Redzone. It was like they really owned the technology in terms of how they were using it. And the lady, the operator who took me around to show me, how she was using and how Redzone was being applied, was just so proud about all the steps that they had eliminated, all the paper that they had eliminated in the process, and how that was really helping, enabling people, letting them, they used to go and pull documents out of different places and locations. None of that was needed now. They had it at their hand. She was able to look up things from there. She was able to see if there's an issue. Where is the downtime going to be? What do I need to do for my next changeover? All of that, was something that was just flowing. It was like so much passion in terms of how she was operating. So, this whole point about empowering the front line, making people, able to take decisions, do things right there, right at the point of work, I think that's so powerful. And that what just threw me away. In all the years that I've been working, nobody's ever told me that they loved my software that much. So, it was almost that if I had taken Redzone away from the lady, she probably would have killed me there and then.
It would have got physical for sure.
Yeah. So I have to say, this was my first experience, and it was, I could really understand what was meant by empowering the front line, being able to give that kind of ability to somebody who otherwise was very dependent on a supervisor coming and telling them what to do or what to change and getting corrected. And I think, that kind of diminishes it a little bit, right? When you're standing there and somebody's telling you, oh, you haven't done this correct or something. But when you can see what you're doing and you have instant feedback, whether you're doing it right or wrong, that really empowers a person. So that was my first experience, and it's only got better and better and better after that.
Well,
so.
I love that. It's human nature. Well, to hear from companies that have rolled out Redzone at very large scale, I would like to welcome Brian Lang, Terry Ledoux, Charlie Reed, and Alan Luce to the stage. Please give them a round of applause. Thanks for coming up. Terry, Alan.
Thank you so much, man. How you doing?
Charlie.
Hey, how you doing? Good to see you.
Hey,
Hey, thank you. How you doing? Yeah. Good to see you.
All right, well, we'll start with like a partial question, a partial introduction. So as we go down the panel, introduce yourself, a little bit about your company, and then why were you looking for a shop floor solution when you found Redzone?
Yeah, so my name is Charlie Reed. I'm with American Highway, and we're the nation's largest producer of load transfer devices for infrastructure. So mostly on the DOT side, also on airports. You might be asking yourself, what the heck is load transfer? I don't blame you. I didn't know what it was either until I got in the business. But if you're driving down a concrete road around Dallas or anywhere else, and you feel that ba-bump, 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 well, that's the seam between the concrete pads. And thanks to our products, you don't get launched at a 5 or 10 degree angle if those two pads change direction at some point in time. So that's what we do. As far as our Redzone journey and what we were looking to get out of it, we had gone through any number of mergers and acquisitions over about a 4-year period. We had started a pretty aggressive platform with Industry 4.0 or Smart Factory. And when you go through those kind of mergers and acquisitions, it sounds like a lot of other people are familiar with what that involves. You find out that you've got a lot of different companies that have a lot of different ways of doing things. And so we were in the midst of looking at an MES. First year of Industry 4.0 was largely automation. But in the process of looking at an MES, I wasn't sure if our team had the stomach to take on another massive project. And fortunately for me, one of our employees at our Fernley, Nevada facility had worked for a pretty large dairy company, and he was familiar with Redzone. And so he suggested that we take a look at it. Well, I was a little skeptical. I'd been a part of a few of these platforms that weren't that effective. You spent a lot of money and you didn't really get a lot of value from it. But what really struck me when we looked at it more closely was the strong philosophy that Redzone had around coaching. And it wasn't just something that they talked about. It wasn't just something that they promoted on their sales literature and whatnot. As we talked more and more with the team, it really struck me that they were serious about it. And in fact, so much so that it wasn't really an option. If you bought our product, you were going to get coaching, one way or the other. And I knew with our culture being very diverse and made up of a lot of different pieces of different organizations, that we were going to need that coaching. We were going to need to have that expertise to get us over that initial hump. And I really do believe that that was the secret sauce, and it's what made us successful.
Love to hear that. If you don't mind me asking, Charlie, what were the results you were hoping to get, what you ended up achieving?
Yeah, so I mean, everybody's going to talk about OEE. That's the easy one, and that's the one that our CFO was mostly interested in as well. We did see those typical breakthrough results. We have one facility that's a little bit slower as far as the benefit. It's a smaller facility, but still they've garnered, and they were the last one to introduce it as well. So they've seen about 14 to 15%. And then our Fernley facility, which was the newest facility, or the first one that introduced it, but our newest facility in the platform, they've actually seen results in excess of 28% OEE uplift. And then the other thing I wanted to mention as far as what I consider to be the greatest value that it's provided for us is part of the Industry 4.0 initiative for us was to reduce our dependence on human labor. And I've heard a lot of other people mention that today. And I want to make an important distinction. When we committed that to our board, we were looking at reducing headcount to the degree of about 50%, and that seems pretty aggressive, and it was. But what I wanted to make sure the board knew is that we weren't going to reduce our labor costs necessarily by 50%, because I really had a strong philosophy around reinvesting those savings back into our people through skills improvement and whatnot, and so upskilling. And so after really 2.5, 3 years of all three facilities being on the program, we have reduced our headcount by about 20%. But that's also come with an improvement in our output levels of about 14, 15% in the first full year on the program. And this year, we've already produced more units in the first 3 quarters than we did all of last year. And we're on pace to be somewhere between 18 to 20% higher this year on output levels with a 20% reduction in headcount.
That's
so pretty significant.
Well, congratulations to you and your teams. Outstanding. Making more with less. Yep. Excellent.
I'm Alan Luce with Dyco Manufacturing. I actually spent 25 years with Alton Brinken Company, ABC, manufacturing fasteners. Just made the transition recently, but my Redzone experience with ABC was really about visualization. Our operators, we had been about a 2-year journey of continuous improvement in lean. They could see at the end of the shift, at the end of the week, at the end of the day, month, all these reports would come out and say, hey, we looked a little bit better, but we really weren't able to connect the dots on what the operators were doing to exactly that pickup that they'd seen. So being able to bring a shop floor visualization, just as Ken had mentioned, really that was the beginning of it, and really got to see that exponentially grow once it was in place. We saw a 37% increase in productivity in our overall OEE, and we could equate that to about every 1% was about a $100,000 improvement annually. So bringing back $3.7 million annually was a kind of a big number, especially for our ownership and board, so rather impressive there. And then it continued on from there. So really, that visualization for the operators, to get them empowered to be able to do things, was really critical for us.
Thank you, Alan. For Patrick and the other finance folks in the room, I'm sure they're doing the math on 37% and 100,000.
Awesome. Yeah.
Congratulations to your team. Terry.
My name's Terry Ledoux, formerly the VP of Digital Manufacturing with Nestle Purina Pet Care. Was there for 3 years before digital manufacturing, which was the fancy word for leading in Industry 4.0. I was a product supply IT director leading Industry 3.0. So we live in Category 4. We are a heavily automated environment. We make what I believe is the world's best pet food. I'm sure some people out here would disagree, some fresh pet people, but anyway, when we were on a journey of TPM, 10 years, had 2 successful factories, one that was actually organic, mostly due to the location of the factory and the work, the available work for the laborers that were in that factory. This was the best choice, and they took hold of TPM and they made that work without a lot of investment. The other factory was in Wisconsin, a heavy union factory, and it took millions of dollars of investment to get TPM to take hold there. It was almost a forced approach. But I still got 20 plus other factories in the US where we're just having very mixed results. And the number one issue that we saw wasn't, we had the data, we had the systems. I mean, we have 155 MES applications. There's no lack of data, there was no lack of visualization. What was really lacking for us was engagement. And that was the number one reason that, it took 12 months of calling and begging Richard Tester and Ken and Zach Soseby, hey, just come out and take a look at this with us. And we met in St. Joe and things took off. But the big issue there was, how do you drive that emotional participation, right? Think about what an operator does. They come in every day, they're going to work an 8-hour shift, and hopefully they don't fight the line, right? But if they fight the line, it's kind of a bad day. They take the bad day home with them. And we quickly learned that people weren't there just to make that paycheck. They wanted to contribute and they wanted to have meaning. And Richard and my first discussion was in St. Joe. He's looking at a strategy screen and I said, look, life has to have purpose, work has to have meaning. And that was the first reason. The second reason was, I said I had 155 MES apps. I've lived in this industry since the early 90s when MES came about and SCADAs, et cetera. And like I've seen with Redzone at many companies, we made MES something that it wasn't. We built quality applications, we built receiving applications, it just became the everything. But the real intention of MES is, how do I connect my ERP system and create a shop floor instruction that merges equipment set points with the recipe, BOM, et cetera. That's really what you're after. How do you collect the data and send it back to ERP? All the extras were a high cost. So the second reason for us was, how do we reduce our technical debt around MES? The environment was changing so fast that my team could not keep up with the business changes and the code changes that we needed to have happen in MES. And Redzone was one of those first starts. But to give you an example, the first factory we did was St. Joe, Missouri. This is also a heavy union factory, low performing factory. We have to remember, we're Purina. We run very, very high volumes. So I tend to focus on not the cost of the product I want to implement, I want to focus on what type of return I'm going to get. That factory got a return of 14% productivity uplift. It was about a 4-month payback. And even the best TPM factory got a 3% improvement. Whole project, I think, paid itself back in 5 months across 23 sites.
Thank you, Terry.
Awesome.
Credit your team. That was, at the time, the fastest rollout of Redzone we had ever seen. And it was because the leadership was bought in.
Yeah, I think people have to understand, we rolled out 6,000 iPads. Every operator has an iPad in our factories in 18 months.
Wow.
Redzone was with us the whole time. That meant a complete rework of our wireless infrastructure at the same time. So it was a big project, but it was super fun. I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Terry. Brian?
Good afternoon. My name's Brian Lang. I'm with the Hershey Company. I currently lead the Hershey Salty Snacks business. Some of you might be saying, Hershey Salty Snacks. We just, everybody knows us for the confectionery business, but a few years ago we started expanding our horizons and we made a lot of acquisitions and we started up a salty snacks business. So if you've heard of Skinny Pop Popcorn, Pirates Booty, Dots Pretzel, that's Hershey Salty Snacks. And in 2023, when we brought in all these acquisitions, I was brought in and said, you need to go make it one company, one division. And so that's what I've been doing over the last 24 months. And as you can imagine, when you have 5 separate companies, 5 different systems, different cultures, you have to have some sort of platform to bring everybody together, speak one common language, have somewhat of a unified culture. So we have several plants in Kansas that we had acquired, and they were already using Redzone. And me and my team were just looking at different options, alternatives. And then when we all went to Kansas and we saw it in action, we're like going, this is it. This is what we need, And one thing that just kind of sold me was obviously the 4 modules of productivity, systems of learning, compliance, reliability, but everything being done with an iPad, right? So I think all of us know, I think the generation entering the workforce doesn't know what life is like without an iPod or iPad, an iPhone, right? This is how people work, right? And just pencil and paper, right? It just doesn't work, right? So I think maybe a previous panelist said it, but we have to design our work for the next generation to make sure we get the best and we keep the best.
Thank you, Brian. Pirate's Booty. My children live off when they were young, iPads and Pirate Booty. So your story resonated with me. Speaking of culture, so you mentioned your culture. What was the culture before deploying a connected workforce solution, and what was the culture after? If anybody wants to go first, that's passionate about it.
I'll speak up, right? One thing that's neat about Redzone is I'm going to steal this term from my boss, who I took through our Indiana hub a few weeks ago, and he was just looking at the screens, and you could see the different lines in order, and he just called it gamify, right? So Redzone kind of gamifies your operations. And so earlier this spring, I was visiting our Kansas hub, and I was in one of the plants, and there's 2 machines, and we had 2 operators working on these machines, and they had maybe 30 minutes left of the shift, and they were in competition with each other to who was going to have the best performance of the shift. And I'm talking, one machine was at 99.4% efficient, one was at 99.6% efficient. I think that what separated the 2 machines was maybe 6 drop pouches, right? Wow. And it's just like, it really drove, right? That competitive spirit. So that's one thing, it's helped to improve the culture.
Love it, love it.
Love that.
I would say that ABC had an amazing culture prior to Redzone. One of our 5 core values is actually empowerment. Then all of a sudden we brought in Redzone and realized, no, actually that's how you end up giving it that tool in the operator's hands to empower them. Yes, they had the ability within their workday to make their own difference, but when they could actually report it and quite honestly brag about it a little bit, turn around and get a high five about it, that was really empowering of our employees. So it really built on a culture that we thought was pretty strong to begin with, and really took it to the next level.
Yep, we do see rapid adoption when there's already a foundation of empowerment there.
We have very large factories, and I'm sure no one's experienced this, right? That factories become like neighborhoods inside, right? You've got batching, you've got processing, you got packing, you got warehouse, right? And you can have a great day in processing, and they're all high-fiving it back there, but in the packing room, we're failing. Warehouse is pointing the finger at packing, packing's pointing the finger back at processing, and batching's just going, what the hell's going on? What Redzone enabled us to do culturally was move from neighborhoods to one factory community. Shifts didn't matter, areas didn't matter. I think at St. Joe, it was week 2, and we hadn't even taught anybody how to do a rally cry yet. We were having a problem in the labeler section, and the processing team said rally cry for the packing room. So if anybody was available, they just moved to packing. But that's how that culture changed. We got rid of the neighborhoods. We focused on how to win the factory. The other cultural change, and this is a big shift for the management team within Purina, all of a sudden, because of the transparency and visibility, operators would come to you, your team leader, they'd go to a meeting, and whatever the issue was, even with TPM, it just disappeared somewhere, right? It didn't get done. All of a sudden, our management team was accountable, right? It was visible, it could be seen. And that was a tough change for some of those sites at first, so it was a significant cultural change, considering we've been doing TPM for 10 years.
Yeah, and I'll expand on that a little bit more, because for us, again, with a lot of the diversity and the cultures and whatnot, it really did a great job of creating that alignment even though we still have a lot of competition between the plants, which some of that, that's pretty healthy. But I think it really is the redistribution and balancing of power. And in this case, I specifically mean knowledge being power, and so most organizations, you get a lot of top down. Most of the folks in leadership positions, they're the one that have the knowledge. They're the ones that have the information. They're the ones that are distributing and sharing that with the employees that are in the front lines. And I really do believe that with this transparency, it's really empowered people with having that knowledge, having that information that they historically didn't have, and just seeing the evolution of how people are able to use that in a really positive way has been unbelievable. And really, I also think one other piece about that, you just mentioned this relative to transparency. That transparency goes both ways. It's really easy for us to see the folks that are actively engaged in what's going on in the day-to-day, and they're providing, writing notes in the system, taking those photos. But I'm also able to watch our leadership team and make sure, the old saying is that sunlight's the best disinfectant. And so with that transparency, it really does allow us to not start every conversation with 5 minutes of who done it, and we can just get down to the brass tacks of problem solving.
I had a plant manager one time called the 5 who's and the 5 who's and the root blame analysis. Right. We are up on time. I could sit up here for hours with this group of manufacturing and technology executives. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. You should be so proud of what your teams have achieved. Unbelievable, I think, is a great word for it, Charlie. Please give a round of applause to our panel.